It is said that laziness builds walls and fences that keep the mind under control. What we often don't realize is that laziness is not just an approach to work, but it also appears in much subtler ways an approach to questioning our thoughts. We all know of the benefits of doing hard work, yet we little understand the benefits of thinking hard thoughts. Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset podcast. Today we're going to be going into the essence of growth mindset and really thinking about how to develop ourselves and our thinking in the pursuit of growth as opposed to being stuck in a fixed mindset. Now, we're going to talk about 7 different ways that lazy thinking occurs and how we can overcome them. And we're going to start with an introduction to the reason these happen, because humans are optimizing machines. We strive to improve and simplify our lives and the world around us, but often this means optimizing for the wrong things. It can make things actually much worse for ourselves and less optimal when we don't really think about what we're optimizing for. Because in nature, if you look at animals seeking food, water flowing from a mountain to the sea, wherever you look, there's an emergence of the path of least resistance. It is only natural to optimize towards a goal and quickly neglect any other options that might be more arduous and difficult. The path of least resistance could often be the lazy option, and many benefits can come from being lazy. That's a lot of development comes from making things easier for ourselves, but also many problems arise. Human thinking, of course, follows the same laws of nature. We want to find paths of least resistance to get to our goal. The problem is that this lazy thinking can actually lead us to a much worse destination than if we took a difficult approach. Imagine, you read a headline that really resonates with how you think about the world. It makes you feel good, or maybe it makes you feel shocked about something that you knew was happening, and you don't actually go and read the full post or watch the video, but you share it, and perhaps even if you did watch it, you might not endeavor to fact check everything that was said about it, because we would much rather feel certain about the world than to sit around doubting ourselves. Doubting takes time and energy. Laziness is much easier, and thus we have fake news because we share things without taking the time to doubt. Now, there are many ways in which our natural lazy thinking can be our downfall. This also ties very much into our ego, and here I'm going to break down 7 of the biggest flaws in lazy thinking and how we can improve them. Now, the first is the quick elimination of doubt and uncertainty. That's wanting to just jump on a quick decision. We hate the idea that we don't know what is going on. We can be consumed by stress when we hold uncertainty, yet there is so much uncertainty around in the world. Pretending that we know what's actually going on is just fooling ourselves. Imagine someone is killed in an accident or maybe even murdered. The family of this person can often be quick to blame the first suspect in a case because they want to seek vengeance quickly and fast and have closure, rather than seeking truth, because they don't want to feel uncertain, and that's natural, but that can lead to innocent people being locked in prison and the actual guilty person that should be the person that they're getting vengeance from walking away freely. That's terrible. A doctor can be rushed to make a decision on a patient's illness, ignoring some contradictory symptoms so that they look like they're making active progress. It can actually be better to wait with some uncertainty than to prescribe the wrong medication or to take the wrong course of action. Again, our nature is to eliminate uncertainty, but this can lead to very bad outcomes, because ultimately eliminating doubt and uncertainty is just comforting. It's just not always the best solution. Having strong opinions, even if we have no idea that we're talking about them, can just lead to misunderstandings, ignorance, blindness towards risks. It's really important to acknowledge that life is very complex. Uncertainty is just a part of it. Instead of looking for quick solutions, we should learn to embrace uncertainty and be open to different possibilities. It's especially obvious in media today, like I mentioned with fake news, where the reality of many things that we want to learn about have a complex answer, yet we'll listen to those who confidently give us a single solution. Solutions to problems with our love life, problems to work, problems to addictions, problems to weight loss. There are loads of different solutions out there, and people usually claiming that their one thing will do it all for you. But ultimately, Humans are crazy different. We're all very individual. The likelihood of this one person's one book about the one thing you should do to solve your weight loss or your love life is probably not going to be correct. But we're just very attracted to these simple answers. Ultimately, the issue is that anyone that claims to have a single answer to one of your problems will sound so confident. But really, we need to listen to someone who doesn't guarantee confidence, who is unsure about things, and has some possible ideas, some of which might work, some of which might not. And it's not sexy, it's not interesting. Your brain just wants to go like, do this thing for me and make it work. It's not life, it's not reality. We need to accept the uncertainty of any solution that we look for in life and be open to trying different things. Number 2, single cause explanations to complex events. Suppose you're watching a basketball game. Your team loses by a single point. So frustrating. And then it's natural to blame the referee for missing a critical call that could have turned the whole game around for you and you could have won by like 1 or 2 points. But what if the referee was not the only factor? What if your team also missed several easy shots over the whole course of the game? What if the team committed a few more turnovers? Or what if the team was lacking a bit of cohesion on their defense? Now, in this case, the path of least resistance, the lazy thinking approach, is to just blame the referee. What a twat. But really, you need to examine the full picture. It's a very complex event. There were lots of things of which one small thing was part of it, but there are a lot more things going on. Again, this is part of embracing uncertainty. It's just so tempting to assign a single cause explanation to complex events, but this rarely captures the full picture. Big things in the world are usually a bunch of very small, random, and probably boring things that compound at just the right time and they explode into something much bigger and more powerful than anyone imagined. Understanding the complexity of events can help us avoid making hasty decisions and instead take a more nuanced approach. A big problem with jumping on single cause explanations is it makes it very easy for us to blame something or someone who often doesn't deserve our hate and our blame. It can lead us to developing this anger at something which causes us to be frustrated, and it can cause us to escalate our own problems. Let's say you were to shout at that referee, or you might get yourself like a red card or banned. If you're a fan, you could just be like spending time on Twitter, like trolling people, being angry, as opposed to actually just seeing how your team can improve overall. It's so much better to consider the many causes to why an event happens. And then we can instead learn to accept the situation, do the important work of seeking where we might want to improve ourselves, to improve the situation internally through our own efforts. And then, so many better things happen for you by avoiding this lazy thinking and doing some hard thinking. Number 3, the justification of your own actions whilst judging the actions of others. I see people doing this all the time, and you'll definitely know this one. Just think about the last time that you perhaps made a mistake or a bad decision. How did you react? Did you accept responsibility? Or did you rationalize this behavior by saying you didn't have any choice, or you did it for a greater good, or life just got on top of you and you didn't have time to make the better choice? But now imagine someone else makes the same mistake at work, let's say. How would you judge them? Would you be more forgiving, or would you be more critical? In both these cases, the path of least resistance is to protect yourself and your ego and minimize your guilt and responsibility in a situation of error. Whilst at the same time, when someone else does this, you'll project all your flaws onto them and make them even worse. And this point, I think, is just so interesting and really worthy of an entire episode, because we are so quick to justify ourselves whilst blaming others. It's no mistake that the Bible preaches to treat others as we wish to be treated, because it's just so hard. But if everybody did it, it was more sympathetic, there could be a lot less anger in the world and more productivity, and everything would be better. It's just that we tend to judge others based on their actions, but when it comes to ourselves, we justify our mistakes and our bad decisions because we're keenly aware of 100% what's going on in our heads and our environment, but we're blind to 99.9% of what's happening in other people's heads. It can lead us to misunderstanding and lack of empathy. To avoid this, of course, we need to practice empathy and try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And I just find it so fascinating that people can justify their actions, even when they're morally questionable, by framing them in a way that seems rational and reasonable to them. And whenever you see someone doing something that you think is morally bad, remember that they don't think that they're a bad person. They're just doing something that seems logical to them. And this really raises the question about our ability to objectively evaluate our own actions and how this lack of subjectivity leads us to ethical lapses ourselves and questionable decision making. Some fun examples you'll probably know about. You have a friend that gossips about other people behind their backs. Yet, they get defensive when other people criticize them. A driver yells at some other motorists for making mistakes, and yet they'll justify any of their own driving mistakes or times that they might need to behave recklessly. And I love the saying that people who drive slower than you are numbnuts and people who drive faster than you are reckless, because that's just how we perceive other people. We'll criticize co-workers who are late to meetings, but make excuses for our own tardiness rather than blaming ourselves for just being completely incompetent, which is what we think of other people. Morgan Housel reminds us that most people struggle to articulate their nuanced thoughts, and we're blind to the vast majority of what people are thinking and how they justify their actions. In the book Evil, it examines how people actually end up committing such heinous acts, such as the Nazis, and it's important to remember that the majority of evil people just don't think they're doing anything wrong. It's just from our side, we don't understand how they're justifying their behavior and the path of thinking they're using to get there. Evil usually enters the world unrecognized by the people who open the door and let it in. Most people who perpetrate evil do not see what they're doing as evil. Evil exists primarily in the eye of the beholder, especially in the eye of the victim. Evil is but rarely found in the perpetrator's own self-image, and it's far more commonly found in the judgment of others. This means we just have a very poor estimation of the odds that we could do evil ourselves. Morgan Housel further makes the point that ordinary people can just be brainwashed into believing outrageous things that in their mind justify outrageous actions. Look at the Russian soldiers given Russian media that Ukraine is led by Nazis and a threat to the Russian nation. Similarly, Primo Levi, a Holocaust survivor, said that monsters exist, but they are too few in number to be truly dangerous. More dangerous are the common men ready to believe and act without asking questions. Because we commonly see the Nazis as evil, but how did an entire country of rational human beings become evil, as it were? In a book about World War II by a German, he recounts being unable to understand why Americans were so angry at the Nazis, and why the Americans couldn't see that the Nazis were just trying to save Europe and that they were the good guys. For us, that seems bonkers. But it's a painful reminder that in reality, the biggest problems in the world come from lack of understanding, from poor communication and poor empathy, rather than intentional acts of evil. In summary, number 3 was a big one, the justification of your own actions whilst easily judging others. But I think it's the cause of some of the biggest problems in the world, something that we would do very well to get better at, and being more empathetic and understanding that no one's trying to be evil and perhaps helping them be better people without just blaming them for stuff. Let's go on to number 4, the belief that your own field of vision is the same as everyone else's. Now, consider someone that hasn't traveled or left their hometown and doesn't know things about other cultures or languages. They'll probably assume that their life is the only right way, that their country is the best. But what if they met someone from a different background who challenges their assumptions and offers a new perspective? Well, in this case, the path of least resistance would just be to cling to their narrow worldview and carry on assuming that they're doing the right thing with their life, that they live in the best country, that they're doing the best way to live their life. And there's no other ways of doing that. The non-lazy way would be to try and expand their horizons and embrace diversity and think about all the different things that are going on in the world and all the other people that are making very sensible decisions of how to live life as well. In America and Europe, we think that we're kind of living life the right way and that everyone else is just trying to do what we're doing, but there really aren't. Countries that are third world are sort of looking to improve their situations in some ways, but they're not necessarily trying to become exactly like us. Anyway, it's important to remember that nothing is more persuasive than what we've seen and experienced firsthand. But our experiences are so limited. We often mistake the different opinions of others for a lack of intelligence. But it's important to realize that everyone's perspective is just very different. And we need to be open to these different opinions and beliefs to actually be able to learn from them. And that way we can develop a more nuanced understanding of the world and avoid making hasty judgments. So some examples that might relate to you is someone who assumes that their way of doing a task is the most efficient, and yet they can be surprised to learn that other people can come up with different ways that might be equally effective methods. We always like our way of doing things, and perhaps we want to tell other people to do it our way when we're doing a job, but there's often many ways to do things. Certainly, as a programmer, it was amazing to watch how many different ways someone can solve the same problem to build a function that just outputs the same thing. And you're like, wow. And that's something that's like got some very limited inputs and outputs. And then like, there's so many different answers to life in the world. It's crazy. Another example, a group of friends might argue about the best type of music, assuming that their preference is the most popular and widely liked. But people just have such different preferences. I'm in a book club and album club with a bunch of friends that like were in the same year at uni as me, with similar education levels and similar backgrounds, and we listen to completely different music. We'll read the same books and we'll have completely different opinions. And I'm like, these are just people that are very like me. And my idea for like what I should recommend other people is like a good book is like, actually, I probably have no idea if anyone's going to like the book I'm talking about at this point. Another example we often see is a child can become confused when his friend doesn't immediately notice something interesting in the clouds, not realizing that their friend has a different perspective is the cause that he can't see it. Or we'll endlessly hear about two different people that witness the same event from different angles will report completely different accounts of what happened, or two different fans of a football match will watch the same event and recount it completely differently. Anyway, this will be summarized nicely by a quote from Daniel Kahneman that says, "You are more likely to learn something by finding surprises in your own behavior than by hearing surprising facts about people in general." So it's really important to think about these things and look at where you might be doing them and why you might be doing some of these surprises, rather than just pointing at lots of other people and being like, oh, wow, you do this wrong and you do this wrong. And it's like, you have to think about yourself here and realize that you're the one making all these mistakes as well. If you run a business, you'll know that people are the most important thing in the company. Every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for a small business owner, because it is. Now, you want to be certain that you have the best candidates and screening tools available for you, which is why I recommend LinkedIn Jobs. I found it so easy to use for my hiring, and it makes it faster to find the right people for your team. And it's free. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 for a reason. It's simple to set up your job, add screening questions so you're talking to the right people, and put the purple hiring frame on your profile, and you're ready to go. You don't need to waste so much time and money talking to the wrong people when you can use LinkedIn Jobs to find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/growth. That's linkedin.com/growth, GROWTH, for the unfortunate people at spelling like myself. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Right. Number 5, the desire to prioritize stories over statistics. Your friend follows a diet for 2 months and loses lots of weight and becomes the epitome of health. They're glowing, and you ask them for their advice and they say they read this diet book and they followed this diet and this is the reason why they're super healthy. And you're like, great, that's a story I believe in. I'm going to follow this diet. Everything's solved. When actually it's a statistic. Most people that follow that diet maybe didn't have that effect. And also, there might be a lot of other causes that made the diet work for them at that time, due to 1, their own biology and how it works, or 2, their own situation in life. Maybe they've just really hit that point in their life where they're like, I am changing my life. I'm absolutely going for it. They were also maybe exercising every day and just doing all the sort of healthy habits to go with this diet, as well as just following the diet properly, which many people just don't do when they do a diet. Now, following the story rather than looking at the statistics of how to actually end up being healthy just makes you follow the wrong thing, and you might end up obsessing over just trying to do this diet as opposed to thinking about health in the bigger picture. Anyway, our desire is to prioritize stories over statistics. Stories might be effective at showing us what certain parts of a statistic mean, but they can be dangerous when broad statistics are ignored over powerful anecdotes. Let's say you're thinking about getting vaccinated, which has suddenly become a lot more topical. You read a report that says vaccine has a 90% success rate. in preventing the disease and a 10% chance of side effects, which could be a bit worrying. But you hear a story from a friend who got the vaccine, was sick for a day, fully recovered, and which one would influence you more? The friend being like, hey, it's totally fine, or the actual statistics? And most people ultimately would follow the friend's advice, being like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry, science, blah. But actually, you should really look at the science and be like, okay, based on my own personal things, 10% chance of having side effects is quite a lot, 1 in 10. Maybe I'll do something different. Now, I'm not anti-vaxxer, and perhaps I should have just avoided this example, or maybe probed it a different way. But anyway, the path of least resistance is to look at emotions and stories over evidence of what's actually the most sensible thing to do. And it's really important to balance data and statistics and avoid making decisions based solely on anecdotes. And remember that we also desire to try and pick up on one contributing factor, which is why stories work so well for us. And we really need to think about the fact that we need to embrace uncertainty and the fact that many causes can be a part of the real end result. And that is why we should really embrace statistics more than just trying to look for one single answer and one single story. And now, moving on to number 6, outsourcing our hard decisions to opinions of pundits, consultants, and the experts with various qualifications or whatever. Imagine you are a CEO of a large company and you need to decide whether to invest in a new project that could have a very big impact on the company's future. You could spend months researching the project, analyzing the data, but it takes time and effort for you. Instead, you decide to hire a team of consultants to do the research for you, to give you their recommendations so you can just make the decision. The consultants come back, they say that this certain project here is a good investment, so you go ahead and invest the money. However, the project is a complete failure and you lose millions of dollars. In this case, you've just outsourced your hard decision making to consultants, thinking that they could make the right call for you. But ultimately, you're the one that knows how your business works and you know the decisions you need to be making. And if you don't take the time to fully understand the implications of the decisions you're making and the potential benefits and downfalls of a project before investing, it's likely for things to go wrong. There's a joke about consultants that their job is really to just help middle managers justify their decisions to senior managers. So they can just say we're doing this project because the consultants and experts have told us to do it, rather than actually having the blame on themselves. But ultimately, we need to take responsibility for our decisions. Now, experts are very important to be listened to in terms of the data and statistics from before, but also we actually need to sort of take responsibility ourselves and work out why something is true or why it isn't. Just outsourcing our decisions straight away to consultants, especially pundits who just have opinions as opposed to actual real reasons, can be very damaging. We might think that they have more insights than us, but they don't always know what they're talking about, and they might not have the same interests at heart as we do. And they may also be limited by their own biases and beliefs that perhaps don't apply to us. They could also have financial incentives to just come up with a decision. Like I was saying earlier, there's a consultants, there might not be a right decision to make, and they're just sort of coming up with one, so it looks like they've come up with an option for you, rather than actually saying that okay, you need to spend more time analyzing something else, or investing in something that just doesn't require any of their extra help afterwards, because they don't want to put themselves out of a job. How many financial consultants are on YouTube telling you to invest in their course so that you finally know how to flip houses or build businesses coming out of your ass, whatever? They're just trying to get you to follow them more. And there's so much money made in coaching people how to coach rather than actually changing people's lives and doing something useful, because people just follow people that promise shit. People just follow people that promise crap, and it's totally unhelpful. So always remember, experts and consultants can provide valuable guidance, but you have to be critical of advice and guidance and make sure you understand any underlying assumptions that they're making and any of their own potential for biases, because you don't want that to influence you at all. It's very easy to assume that other people are smarter than us in things that we aren't an expert in, but outsourcing hard decisions to experts can be very lazy and can create groupthink. Instead, we need to do some non-lazy thinking of making some hard decisions and doing some hard research to understand the full perspectives before making a decision and a choice. Finally, number 7, overconfidence as a way of shielding against uncomfortable fact that the world is just driven by probability and there's no black and white certainties. Imagine you are a professional poker player. You've been playing a high stakes game with a lot of money on the line. Ooh. Well, you've been playing very well all night and you built up a big stack of chips. You're like, you're on the money. This is your night. But as the game goes on, you start to get more and more confident in your abilities. You start to take bigger risks and bet more aggressively, making bigger bluffs. But eventually your luck runs out. You start losing hand after hand. Before you know it, your chips have disappeared, you're out of the game, and you're a loser. Well, in this case, overconfidence was a shield that protected you from the uncomfortable truth that this game is driven by probability, not certainty. You just convinced yourself that you were invincible temporarily because you had a winning streak. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to lose. But every single hand, just as likely that you will lose as the hand before and the hand after. That's reality. You are always just one bad hand away from losing everything in poker. But if you ignore the probabilities, you start taking unnecessary risks and you end up losing all the things you've worked for. So yes, finally, we are forever bound to be overestimating our abilities, underestimating the role of luck and chance in our lives. We assume our success is due solely to our brilliant skills because we're so fantastic and wonderful and our hard work is so important and brilliant. But our failures are, of course, a result of external factors out of our control. But this overconfidence leads us to make unnecessary risks and very poor decisions, especially when we fail to acknowledge the role of probability and uncertainty in our lives. It can also prevent us from learning from our mistakes and adapting. To avoid the trap of overconfidence, it's important to stay humble and open-minded, to recognize success and failure are often the result of a complex interplay of factors, including luck, skill, circumstance, and by doing that, will improve our decision-making, increase our chances of achieving long-term success and happiness. Now, Annie Duke wrote the book Thinking in Bets, and I had her on the podcast to talk exactly about this concept of actually thinking about life in probability and really like optimizing for how to make very good decisions instead of just letting our mind run away with us and being stupid. It's in our nature to try and distinguish between like the right decision and the wrong decision, but ultimately there's just like a better decision and a worse decision. And often a good decision might work out badly. Like in a poker hand, you will make the most probable decision for you to win, but you can still lose. And you can also make a decision that like you should probably lose at, but sometimes win. And that can lead to you fooling yourself by like making a bad decision, but it working out. In the same way, like making a good decision and it failing and you think that you've done something bad, but actually you did the right thing as well as you could. And in the same way, like our brain just isn't always optimized for these statistics and probabilities. So if you think about the weather, something that most people always get wrong is that if the weatherman says there's a 20% chance of rain, that doesn't mean that like 20% of the day will have rain, or it'll be like 20%ish rain, like a bit of drizzle. That just means that 1 in 5 times when he says that, it will be raining. And if he gives that prediction, 4 in 5 times, it'll be dry. So if you never take your umbrella when there is a 20% chance of rain, 1 in 5 times you will get rained on. Now, on the day that you get rained on, you will 100% be experiencing rain. And you'll be like, who is this man that said 20% chance of rain? It's 100% rain. This guy's an idiot. And you're like, no, actually, he said 1 in 5 days, when I say 20%, there will be lots of rain, and then other times no rain. But we always expect like just like a little bit of drizzle and it's nothing. So the weatherman is not wrong when he gives you probabilities. He's just giving you a probability. Your ability to understand the probability is what is incorrect. Wrapping it all up, this was a long but so important area of thinking. And if you can get this together, it's so good for an actual growth mindset. So for leadership, self-improvement, any of that, you genuinely need to look at improving all of these areas. So we need to remember that most people always look to taking the easy option of just holding on to their beliefs through denial, over-optimism, stories, rather than just accepting the probabilities of what's actually going on and the reality of a situation. Whether blaming a referee for a single action that lost a match as opposed to the whole team and everything that went on in the entire hours of play, or blaming a late co-worker for their ineptitude, and whilst thinking that the times that we are late is for very important reasons, we're constantly flawed with our lazy thinking and not willing to take the harder route of doing some hard thinking. Someone who is open to the possibility of actually being wrong all the time is much less likely to do things like evil acts or assume that others will be sharing their worldview. Although your ego needs you to be correct as much as possible, that does mean you'll always fall straight into these traps of lazy thinking. And if you can't learn to control your ego, it will control you. Now, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for listening. As always, life is about enjoying yourself, and that starts with today. So be nice to yourself, and whilst you're at it, be kind to someone else too.